All right, let me welcome you to Medzone African Motives. Uh, we are going to be on Business Studies Grade 11. So we are going to do the essay question, which is section C. So we are going to do the paper which was written in March 2024 for us to make a preparation for a term one, for us to make a preparation for term one revision, which we are mainly going to look at an essay question. So this paper is the paper that we have just discussed in our previous presentation. So it's the last section of that question paper, which was written in Gauteng province, Johannesburg, which is South District D11. So that is that. So let us move on to instruction and information. So don't forget that this is in relation to business studies, grade 11 essay question. So let's quickly go to section C. Like we are saying, we are on section C, where we are looking at an essay. So before we can even attend to the questions under section C, we first have to know that for us to write essay, we have to make sure that you're going to first write what? The introduction. That is that. So we first have to know the structure of an essay. We first start by introduction, then we come to the body, and then as well as conclusion. So our essay must be written in points form. So it's very important that you start it with introduction. So with introduction, you are going to talk about anything that does with the contemporary socio-economic issues, as this is what we are to write about on question 5. So on your body now, you're going to write the body, basing yourself with the given aspects. So there are aspects that you're going to be given. Then this is how you're going to build your body by. And then you give recommendations or summary of what you've talked about in conclusion. So that is that. So let us now get to our business. Let us now get to our business. As it says, business environments, contemporary socio-economic issues. So we are given a scenario that you have to go through first. As it says, socio-economic issues such as piracy, cultural and demographic issues or economic crime and strikes impact negatively on business operations and productivity. So the government introduced the Labor Relations Act in order to assist the business dealing with strikes and go-slow actions. So now, with the reference to the above statement, we're talking about these statements. With the reference to the above statement, write an essay when the following, with the following aspects. So here are the given aspects that I've said you're going to build your body with. So the first one says elaborate on the meaning of piracy. That is the first aspect. The second one, discuss the impact of the following socio-economic issues on business operations. That is cultural and demographic issues, economic crimes, and strikes. So the third aspect, analyze the difference between strikes and go-slows. The last aspect on question 5, advise business on the purpose of Labor Relations Act. So these are the aspects that you're going to write our essay on. So now let us be on the answers of an essay question on question 5. So like I've said, you are going to start with what? Introduction. You are going to start with introduction. So it says socio-economic issues are societal issues that may have negative impact on business. So when we talk of socio-economic issues, we are talking about the problems that are affecting our society. Because you're saying they are going to impact, they're going to have a negative impact on business. So, we have said that it means we are saying socio-economic issues are problems. Socio-economic issues are problems. We are talking about what? Problems in a society and the economy that affect business negatively. So these problems do affect the business negatively. So these issues influence how business operate, sell products, and make profit. So that is that. For example, high unemployment reduces the number of customers who can buy products. So that's a problem that you're talking about. That is going to affect or impact our business negatively. The problem of unemployment. It's a societal issue. It's a problem. And if we have that problem, it means our production is going to be affected. We are not going to make profit because there is no income on the table. So it means now the buying power is going to decline. So that is that. So they further on say there are issues that affect people and the economy in a negative way. So there are people, these issues, they are issues that affect people. So these issues, these problems that you're talking about, they affect people. Because now, if there are such issues, people are going to be affected because they're going to find themselves without work. And the economy as well is going to be affected because if the production is low, then it means that the economy of the country is affected negatively as it will decline as well. So again, socio-economic issues have the potential to influence the efficiency of a business. So the way products are marketed as well as the way products are going to be distributed. So these problems, socio-economic issues, have the potential to influence the efficiency of a business. So they can as well, again, influence the efficiency of the business. So that depends on how we market our products and how we distribute our products to reach the hands of the consumers. So this is our introduction. So now going back to the aspect that we're asked to talk about, we're asked to elaborate on the meaning of what? Of piracy. So now let us come to the answers on piracy, meaning of piracy. So as it says, unauthorized use or reproduction of original music, film, books, or computer software, patent rights, and the trademarks without a consent of the rightful owner. That is what you're saying. Unauthorized use of products. So that's what you're saying. You're talking about unauthorized, unauthorized use of products. Use of products. That is that. Where we are saying piracy happens when people copy or use music, movies, like we've said, software, books, without the permission from the owner. That is that. For example, downloading a movie illegally. That is, if you download a movie illegal from the internet, that's piracy. You are pirating by doing that. That is a piracy. Also, they said products are associated with piracy are computer software like DVDs, CDs, and etc. Many people download music from internet without being aware that they are infringing someone else's intellectual property right. So that is that when you're talking about the meaning of piracy. So now let us go to another aspect that we are asked to discuss. That is the second aspect. Discuss the impact of the following social economic issues on business operations, cultural and demographic issues. So now we are on a negative of cultural and demographic issues. So this is negative impact on cultural and demographic issues. So this is where we are. So like it says, different groups of people with different cultures will behave differently as consumers, which would affect the business marketing strategies and sales. Get that straight. As we are saying, different groups of people with different cultures will behave differently. So these are different groups, and the cultures also do differ. So it simply says they're going to behave differently as consumers, which would affect the business marketing strategies and sales. So that is that. We are talking about people from different cultures have different buying habits, which affect the marketing strategies. For example, a clothing store selling traditional African attire for cultural events. So their marketing strategies are not going to be the same. So that is that. So again, as it says, new fashion and cultural trends create different kinds of consumers, which may result in the reduction of sales for existing products. So if we come up with new fashion and cultural trends, they create different kinds of consumers. So that is going to affect our sales. Some business may not keep abreast with current trends and they may lose their market share. So we find that other business, they are not aware of the changes that are taking place, like technological change. They are not aware of the fashion that is now taking place. They are still behind, and that is going to affect their market share. They are going to lose sales because now the customers are now going to switch to rivals. Business need to try and accommodate the preference of the diverse consumer body so that it could lead to an increase in sales for the business. So that is that. So now let us move on to um, another aspect. Let's see. So remember, we asked to also do what? Economic crimes. Impact of economic crimes. So that is that. Let's just go straight to economic crimes. Negative impact of economic crimes. So negative impact of economic crimes. So that is that. So the first one is loss of income if the money was stolen from the business. So if the money was stolen from the business, it means that the business is going to lose that money. So business lose money when crimes such as theft or fraud occur. So if there is a fraud that is occurring there, it means now the business is going to lose money. For example, an employee stealing money from the cash register. So that is going to uh, make the business to lose that money. Loss of jobs if business closed down. So now we're talking about job losses, where business may close due to financial losses caused by crime. So the business will be forced to close down. So it leads to decrease in investors' confidence, resulting in poor economic and business growth. So here we're talking about the decrease in investor confidence. So investors avoid business or countries with high crime levels. So the investors do not make a business with those people. So they try almost to avoid such countries or such businesses with high crime. So now let us move on. Also, it says theft of the business profit through fraud or deception lead to decrease in profits for the business. So, meaning to say, what you are saying is that fraud reduces profits. What you are saying is that fraud reduces profits. That is that. So, fraud and deception take money away from the business. So that is that. They take money away from business. For example, a small shop closing after repeated robberies. Also, we were saying fraud reduces profit. Maybe we can talk of employees creating fake invoices to steal money. That's a fraud, and that is going to affect what the profit. Business need to spend more money on installing additional security features in offices on their premises. This may result in additional cost. So here we are talking about the increased security cost. You're talking about the increased security cost. Business must spend more money on security. That is what you're saying. Cybersecurity poses a huge challenge, especially for business who advertise their products on the internet. So here we're talking about the cyber a crime, where we are saying online business face hacking and data theft. So, for example, hackers stealing a customer banking information from website. That's what you're talking about. Hope we are together on that. So now we are going to another aspect where we were asked now to analyze a difference. Well, where we are on strike. Like we are to discuss the impact of strike on business operations. Impact of strike on business operations. So here we are, a negative impact of strikes on business. Negative impact of strikes. As it says, strike scares of potential investors. So the scarce investors, strike scarce of potential investors. So investors avoid areas with frequent labor unrest. So investors, they don't want to invest with a business or in a country whereby there is a frequent labor unrest, where there are a lot of strikes that are happening. So they know very well that is going to affect their returns on investment. So that is that. Because during strike, what is happening? The production is going to stop. So that is why the investors doesn't want to do with business or invest to business with frequent strikes. Business may be forced to close down, especially those located in townships. So here, business closures. Business may close temporarily during strike. We know that during strike, business now are to stop producing or stop selling. So that is that. Business results business results in loss of production as employees stay absent from work during the strikes. So we're talking about loss of production. Here we're talking about the loss of production because workers stop working, which reduces output. There will be no output if they stop working. So that is that. Also, it further on says they can lead to violence, assault or looting, destruction of property, and intimidation of workers who do not strike. So, violence and property damage. Strikes may lead to looting and destruction. That is that. So, also it says employers can lose their pay for all days that they strike. Here we're talking about loss of wages. Workers do not receive pay during strike days. They do not get what? A pay. So that is that. Also, economy can be jeopardized since production is lost. So we are talking about the economy damage. Reduced production harms the national economy. So once the production is low, that is that that as well affect what? The economy because it's going to be slow as well. Expenses of increased salaries and wages is often passed on to the consumer, which causes inflation. So we're talking about what? The inflation now. We're talking about the inflation. As you're saying, business increases price to cover higher wages. So that is that. You'll find that even food prices increase after wage increases. So that is that. Business lose income because of productivity is low. So reduced productivity. So business lose profits due to low productivity. It can also affect the teamwork in the workplace in instances where not all workers are in support of such industrial action. So there will be workplace conflict. There will be workplace conflict. Strikes can create tension among workers because some will find that they are not in support of the industrial action, while at least others they support it. So that will bring conflicts, workplace conflict. So that is that. Business suffer financial losses due to low levels of productivity and consumer confidence is adversely affected. So we're saying the business are going to suffer financial due to low level of productivity. So it means they're not going to make money. So that is that. So now let us go to another aspect that we are asked to talk about, where it says analyze the difference between strikes and go-slows. Difference between strikes and go-slows. So let us be on those differences. So here are our answers on those differences. So the first we are going to talk about the strike. Strike, as it says, employees temporarily stop working completely until their demands are met. That is a strike. Workers stop working completely until their demands are met. So, for example, teachers refusing to go to work until salary increase. That is a strike. But if go slow, they say workers work slowly as possible to reduce production output. So with go slow, they go slow. They don't stop coming to work. But what they do is to stop production by making sure that they are going to work slowly, 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 slowly. So that you as in workers deliberately work slowly to reduce productivity. So that is that. So you'll find that, for example, factory workers producing very few goods per day, just to reduce production output. That is that. Also, it says employees do not get paid for their days spent on strike. So employees are not going to pay. They are not going to get their pay during the strike. So it affects their salaries and wages. Employees still must be paid as they are doing the work. These ones who are going slow, they go slower. They are still getting their payment because they are still doing the work. Workers will not be able, workers will not be fired when participating in legal and protected strike. So they are not going to be fired because of the strike is legal. It's legal, so that is that. Workers participating in a go-slow are often punished, sometimes fired. So this one, they can be fired. That is that. That is the disadvantage of doing a go-slow, is that you sometimes get punished. You sometimes get punished, though you are still getting your pay, but you can be fired and get punished. A collective and organized sensation of work by employees to force their employers to accept their demand. Here, the employees' aim is to disrupt the workplace production. So these are the difference between strike and go slow. So now let us go to another aspect. So the other aspect, which is the last one for question 5, is that advise business on the purpose of Labor Relations Act. Advise business on the purpose of Labor Relation Act. So that is that. Let us go to purpose of Labor Relation Act. So before we can even go there, there are two things that you've just left on strike and go slow. That is, as it says, strike represents the final stage of disputes or disagreement between management and employees, while at least the go slows represent a form of industrial action in which work or process is deliberately delayed or slowed down as a form of protest. So the goal of strike is temporarily stop the production or efficiency. So that is that. So now let us be on the purpose of Labor Relation Act. purpose of Labor Relation Act. So the first purpose is that provide framework where employees, trade unions, and employers work together to discuss matters relating to employment. For example, wages, conditions of the employment. So meaning to say, it promotes what? A corporation. It promotes cooperation. So LRA encourages cooperation between employer and employees. So that is that. It promotes order, negotiations, and employee participation in decision making. So that is that. So as we are saying, it promotes orderly negotiations and employee participation in decision making. So what we are trying to say is that it promotes fair labor practices. So it ensures that workers are treated fairly. It also promotes the resolution for labor disputes. So here we are trying to say it provides systems to resolve conflicts. It provides systems to resolve conflicts. That is that. For example, we can talk of disputes that are taken to the CCMA. So that is that. It outlines the relationship between employees and employer. So here we are talking about what? Where we are saying it outlines, it makes sure that there is a relationship, healthy relationship between these two parties, employee and employer. Hope you're together on that. It promotes fair employment practices. Promotes fair employment practices. That is that where we say it makes sure that there is a fair employment practices where everyone is treated equally. It provides simple procedure for registration of trade unions and employer organization. We know that trade unions represent employees and employers organization represent what? The business. So as we are saying, uh, it registered trade unions. It means it allows legal registration of unions. So that is that. That is when you're talking of NAM, National Union of Mine Workers. That is that. When you're making an example of those trade unions. Also, regulate the rights of the trade unions and facilitate collective bargaining. So, meaning to say, it promotes collective bargaining. Workers negotiate salaries through unions. The workers are going to negotiate salaries through unions. It regulates the effectiveness of bargaining councils and state councils. That is that. It establishes workplace forums to promote the interest of all employees in the workplace, whether they belong to trading or not. So meaning here we are saying it establishes workplace forums where employees can participate in decision making. For example, workers discussing workplace safety with management. That is that. It allows workplace forums where employees may participate in decision making, like we have already said. It established commission for conciliation, mediation, and arbitration to resolve labor disputes through statutory conciliation, mediation, and arbitration. It also endorses the right to strike against retrenchments and facilitate labor disputes. So that is that. And it clarifies the transfer of contracts of employment procedure and establish labor courts and labor appeal, of course, to deal with labor issues. So now we are to get to conclusion. So with conclusion, like it says, socio-economic issues continuously poses challenge to business success and continuity. So business should find different strategies to do that will ensure sustainability and profitability in future. So now we are to move on to question 6. We are to move on to question 6. So let's quickly attend to question 6. So question 6 is business venture, forms of business ownership. It's forms of business ownership. So as it says, the registrar of companies guides investor by issuing documents such as the Memorandum of Incorporation. The government is also having responsibility to establish state-owned companies. Investors can benefit from establishing a company over other forms of ownership. Some investors prefer to join an existing business as other avenues of acquiring business such as franchising, leasing, and outsourcing. So that is that. So now we are to answer the questions that follows. We are to write what an essay. Write an essay on the forms of business ownership, in which you include the following aspects. So in which you include the following aspects. The first aspect is to elaborate on the meaning of Memorandum of Incorporation. The second one, you have to discuss the following benefits of establishing company over other forms of ownerships: legal status and liability, ownership and management, capital and cash flow. Then you evaluate the impact of state-owned companies and outline the characteristics of personal liability. So these are the aspects, but you remember we have said when you write essay, you first have to start with introduction, and then you come to body, which you build to it with those aspects, and then you give conclusion. So that is that. So let us quickly go to our answers for question 6. Our answers for question 6, where we have to start with introduction, like we have said. So here is our introduction. As it says, Memorandum of Incorporation serves as a constitution of company. So that is that a company is legal entity separate from its owners, and it operates according to the Memorandum of Incorporation, MOI. So example, a registered company such as a retail chain. So that is that. A company is a legal person who has capacity and powers to act on its own. That is what we have said. It is a legal entity separate from its owners. So a memorandum of incorporation is a document that sets out the rights and responsibility and duties of shareholders and directors. So it serves as a constitution of company. So in the memorandum of incorporation, it means the responsibilities and duties of the shareholders and their directors are stated in there. So that is what we are saying. It serves as a constitution of the company. So that is that. Now, the first aspect was us to talk about the meaning of Memorandum of Incorporation. As you can see that we said it serves as the constitution of company. So that is that, as when you are saying the Memorandum of Incorporation is the main legal document that governs what? The company. So that is that. So companies are governed according to the rules stated in the Memorandum of Incorporation. So we're talking about rules of the company. So the company must follow the rules in the Memorandum of Incorporation. For example, rules on how directors are appointed. So company must follow that. They don't just appoint the directors. They have to follow the rules that are in the Memorandum of Incorporation. Hope we are on one page. We're still on one page. So now, each company must provide a copy of the Memorandum of Incorporation to the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission. So we're talking about the CIPC, Companies and Intellectual Property Commission. So you are to, as a company, must provide a copy of your memorandum to this body, CIPC. So hope we are together when you say you are to register with CIP, Companies and Intellectual Property Commission. Every company must submit the MOI to Companies and Intellectual Property Commission. So you are to submit it there. The MOI describes the relationship between the business and its stakeholders. So it explains stakeholder relationships. It explains the relationship between directors, shareholders, and the company. That is that. It also describes the rights and responsibilities and duties of the shareholders and directors. So it explains the rights and responsibilities. So it means that it outlines the duties of directors and shareholders. For example, directors responsible for managing company finances. So that is the duty that they are to perform. Provides details about the corporation, the number of directors, and share capital. So here they contains company information. Or like here we said, they are going to provide details about incorporation, number of directors, share capital. So those are to be explained in the memorandum of incorporation. Also includes information about company's name, registration office, and records. So here we are talking about it contains company information. So that is that. So the other aspect we're asked to talk about the benefits of establishing company versus other forms of ownership. Benefits of establishing company versus other business ownership. So we are to talk about legal status and liability, ownership and management, and etc. So now let us talk about the legal status and liability. As it says, a company has its own legal status, trading name, and owns its asset. Meaning to say, we are talking about a separate legal personality. We are talking about separate legal personality. Company exists separately from its owners. That is what we are saying. The company can sue or be sued. That is that. Shareholders' private assets are protected as they have limited liability. So shareholders only lose the money they invested. All they can lose is only the money that they have invested. So that is that. Owners are not responsible for company debts with personal assets. That is what we have said it's a separate legal personality or separate entity, legal entity. The shareholders have no direct legal responsibility. They have no direct legal uh, responsibility. So companies have their own names, like they've said, and these are protected. Hope we're together on that. So now we come to ownership and management. Ownership and management. It says shareholders are able to buy and sell shares freely in a public company. So shareholders can sell shares to other investors. So that is that. The company is managed by a qualified, competent board of directors. So professional directors manage the company. That is that. A company is likely to use consultants as it has a larger pool of skills and expertise. So that is that. Also, directors are more likely to take risks and allow growth opportunities for the business. So let us move on. Now we are on capital and cash flow. Capital and cash flow. So we are going to talk about the advantages as well as the disadvantages of state-owned company. So the first advantage is the profits may be used to finance other departments. So the profits of the company can help other departments to grow. It also offers this essential service which may not be offered by private sector. So they provide services that are important for citizens, which the private sector is going to be difficult to provide. Like we can talk of hospitals for health, we can talk of educations, building of schools, of which private sectors is going to be difficult to do that. Prices are kept reasonable and create sound competition with private sector to make services affordable to more citizens. So that is that when you're talking about the affordable services. So that is that when you're talking about affordable services. Wasteful duplication of services is eliminated. Planning can be coordinated through central control. Also, it generates income to finance social programs. Also, jobs are created for all skill levels. So it also creates what? Employment. They provide jobs for many people. So that is that. Now we have the disadvantage of a state-owned company. May result to poor management as government is not always as efficient as the private sector. Poor management, government business may be insufficient. You'll find that we have mismanagement in public enterprises. Inefficiency due to the size of the business. So that is that when you're talking about inefficiency due to size of the business. Often rely on government subsidies, dependence on government funding. So that is that. A lack of incentive for employees to perform if there is no absence of other motivators such as productivity bonuses. So limited incentives. Employees may lack what motivation if there are no rewards. Government can lose money through the business. So government can lose money through businesses. Also, a lack of incentive for employees to perform if there is no share in profit. So that is that. Losses must be made by the taxpayer. Shares are not freely tradable, making it difficult to raise capital. Also, the COC must follow strict regulations for operations to raise capital, and financial statement must be audited. So these are the disadvantages of state-owned companies. Also, directors. So now we are on to another aspect, characteristics of personal liability company. So the first one says the company name must end with INC. So the company name must include INC. That is the first characteristics of what? Personal liability company. For example, a law firm registered as ABC and Anthony's INC. Then also it says directors have unlimited liability and they are jointly liable for the debts of the business, even if they are long out of office. So directors have unlimited liability. Directors are responsible for debts of the company. So for example, directors paying debts if the company fails. The memorandum of incorporation should state that it is a personal liability company. So we're talking of MOI, must state company type. So the MOI must show it is personal liability company. Memorandum of incorporation. They must at least have one director on their board of directors. So at least one director. So the company must have at least one director. For example, a consulting firm with one managing director. It needs a minimum of one shareholder, and there is no limit on the number of shareholders that a private company may have. At least one shareholder. So there must be at least one shareholder. So that's that. Investors put money into the investors put capital into earn profit for shares. So that is that. Also, the company has a legal personality as well as unlimited continuity. So now we are on conclusion. Conclusion, as it says, personal liability companies are able to raise capital more than sole trade, partnership, and close corporation. So they raise more capital than these two other forms of business ownership like sole trader, partnership, and close corporation. Personal liability company, close corporation is more sustainable in the future because of their unlimited continuity. So this is the end of this presentation. Thank you very much for your time. Please share with others. And please don't forget to hit the subscription button. Thank you.